Actually, he and I are within a couple of weeks of being the same age, and we won't talk about that. Nothing is going to be said about ages here. It's only a number anyway, right? Dennis Balthaser moved to Roswell in 1996 to pursue his interest in the Roswell incident and ufology in general after retiring from the Texas Highway Department in El Paso with 33 years in civil engineering. Prior to that, he served 3 years in the U.S. Army Engineering Battalion. From 1996 to 1998, Dennis served as the UFO investigator for the Roswell International UFO Museum and was also on their board of directors for the museum. Today, he's an independent researcher, investigator, journalist, and lecturer. Dennis has done over 350 TV, radio, and other media interviews related to the Roswell incident and other topics, appearing on CNN, MTV, the Sci-Fi Channel, the Today Show, Dateline, Nightline, NBC, ABC Nightly News, the Jeff Rense program, Coast to Coast AM, Discovery Channel, National Geographic, and the History Channel. Dennis is a certified UFO investigator with the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, and currently writes editorials for 31 websites and the nation's foremost magazine about unidentified floating objects, UFO Magazine. Dennis is also a board member of the Great Pyramid of Giza Research Association Advisory Board. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please help me welcome Dennis Balthaser.
Thank you. Today I want to try to share a little information with you about where your tax money goes that you probably may not or may know about. When doing lectures about the UFO phenomenon, one has to be careful what he chooses to talk about for several reasons. First and foremost is the fact that I cannot stand here and display a piece of physical evidence from a UFO crash to prove that UFOs are real. Skeptics, debunkers, and critics need something physical to admit that UFOs are real and aliens do exist. Kind of like seeing is believing. I rely on things such as love and the wind, which are not physically seen, but we know they exist. No one has ever seen love, but most people have experienced it. Same with the wind. We don't actually see the wind, but you can easily see the results caused by the wind. So for me, physical evidence is not a prerequisite, but simply a benefit I wish we had when researching UFOs. With underground bases and tunnels, we do have physical proof that they exist, even though in some cases we don't fully know or have not been told what their real purposes are. It's extremely important in doing this research that the researcher has factual information or at least have references that can substantiate what's being presented. Some of the things I'll be sharing with you are based on theories, others are rumors that have existed for some time, while other things will be based on hard facts, supported by pictures that prove their existence. So in this presentation, I hope to open your mind a little and share some of the research I've uncovered as it relates to this subject. As always, you will make the final decision on whether you believe it or not. Cover-up is a term sometimes overused when discussing UFOs, since 90% of what is seen is in fact explainable as natural phenomena or man-made objects, so it's that unknown 10% that we're concerned about. In the case of man-made objects, I would hope that our country is leading the world in the technology and that some of the things that are seen in the skies do really belong to us. I do believe, however, that we lead the world in technology when it comes to things underground. So my subject matter for this presentation is not about what is seen in the skies as we can explain, but rather what may be going on under our feet deep within the earth. If you think UFOs are a cover-up, hang on to what you got, because what I'll present almost makes that cover-up seem mundane. Belief in a subterranean world has been handed down as myth, tale, or rumor for generations from all over the world. Some of these stories date back to ancient times. Socrates spoke of huge hollows within the earth, which were inhabited by man and vast caverns with rivers flowing through them. Nowhere is this belief more prevalent than with the Native Americans of North America. The Hopis believe that they emerged from a world beneath the earth through a tunnel at the base of San Francisco Peak near Flagstaff, Arizona. Information is now available showing that many countries around the world have been building and using underground tunnels and chambers for various reasons for many years. And I'll explain some of those in this presentation. So it's no surprise that America, our government and our military, have been in the forefront of these projects, which in recent years have become necessary due to satellites being able to read a newspaper from 200 miles above the earth. As far back as August of 1989, a U.S. News and World Report magazine article stated that a secret plan to carry on government in case of disaster was revealed. It was called Continuity of Government. Another article in the Washington Post newspaper in 1998 stated that North Korea, Iran, and other countries are concealing their ballistic missile programs from U.S. spy satellites by using enormous underground laboratories and factories to build and test their weapons. According to that report, North Korea, Iran, Russia, and China have made extensive use of the underground construction, which enables them to do things such as development and storage, and indeed even launching from underground hidden silo areas. Of these countries, North Korea has done some of the most extensive work underground, including machinery capable of boring a hole 50 feet in diameter and 200 feet in length per day. As I'll show you later, the United States has been keeping up with this technology also. Civil engineering was my profession for over 36 years. And during that time, I was involved with the construction of many bridge structures which required state-of-the-art equipment and technology to fabricate and erect. When I started researching underground bases and tunnels, my engineering curiosity was aroused again. If what I will discuss exists, it involves technology and cost that most people can't comprehend. Also, if it exists, it may scare you. If in fact our government has and is doing what I will share with you, because the implications are not something that you and I will be happy about. Basically, what I'm sharing with you is available to anyone willing to do the research in books, the internet, through individuals and other sources. I'll let you decide what you want to believe. Terms like one world government and the new world order often are related with some of the things I'll mention. Like my research into UFOs, I'm searching for the truth, because our future depends on it, and I don't believe we're being told the truth. In the 1960s, the United States constructed missile silos at various strategic locations around the country as a defense mechanism in the case of an attack. Some of these facilities contained up to 3 missiles, and very little was visible above ground on the surface. The complex housing these 3 silos was much larger than I suspected, containing 2 control centers, a living area, a power plant, fuel storage, water tanks, and equipment terminals to support the 3 missiles in silos at a depth of 165 feet underground. I won't go into total costs for each of these complexes, but as we go through some statistics of one complex, you can add up the dollars yourself. Also keep in mind that this particular complex is only active for 2 years, from 1963 to 1965. There's some tremendous amounts of material used here. The doors, there's 2 116-ton doors. That's 232,000 pounds of steel. 2,000 feet of tunnel, 2,400 miles of reinforcing steel, 405,000 tons of concrete, 6,900 tons of structural steel, 800,000 cubic yards of dirt was taken out, 2 30,000-gallon water tanks, 2 $67,000 diesel tanks, capacity 150 people for 30 days at a depth of 160 feet. That's an aerial shot of one of those missile silos just a few miles east of Roswell. The Atlas missile sites contained one missile, and like the Titans, had everything connected to their operation below ground, out of sight. One of the sites, about 10 miles north of Roswell, was purchased by a company named Project Terraform, Incorporated, in 1998, as stated in the Roswell Daily Record newspaper on July 12, 1998. This silo chamber is 50 feet in diameter and 185 feet deep. Has a volume of about 363,000 cubic feet. And although the purchase price was not revealed, the facility was constructed for about $14.5 million in 1960. That's for one. And we had 12 of them around Roswell. They were here to protect the 509th bomb wing. Project Terraform planned to create an environment similar to the one on Mars for research and education. As stated in the article, the silo chamber has a volume of 363,000 cubic feet, is 50 feet in diameter at a depth of 185 feet. For those wanting to own one of these abandoned missile silos, the Titan site in Washington State was for sale on eBay. Asking price, $1.5 million. Missiles not included. It does, however, include 16 underground buildings with 360-foot deep missile silos. I suppose of all the base locations known to the public, Area 51, 85 miles northwest of Las Vegas, Nevada, has become one of the most famous, while having some of the least information available pertaining to what actually transpires there. The base on the surface is large, covering an area equal to the size of Connecticut, bordering on the Nevada test site and the Nellis Air Force Base. An additional 8,000 acres was acquired in 1995. The Air Force told Congress it was needed for national security. Now this is the back gate. There's two gates going into Area 51. We were there in 2006. And the double gates, you get inside that gate and you're between gates, so you're not going to go anywhere. That's the guard shack. There's a pole here with a camera on top. And I was walking down along the boundary, and that camera was following me. And if I stopped, the camera was on me. And I walk a little further, the camera was on me again. After about 3 times, I waved at the guards to let them know I knew they were there and watching me. But it's quite a place to see the security there. Since the Clinton presidency in the 1990s, the President of the United States has continued to issue a presidential determination each year exempting the base from complying with environmental laws, meaning the base does not have to comply with laws enforced from every other organization that handles toxic waste or other hazardous materials. The reason given is the fact that activities at Area 51, also known as Groom Lake, have been properly classified, and its disclosure would be harmful to national security. Security at Area 51 is some of the most stringent and highly technical of anywhere in the world. Where roads cross the boundary of the base, clear restricted area signs are posted, which mean what they say. The use of deadly force is authorized. That means they can shoot you. Posted guards employed by Wackenhut and known as Camel Dudes patrol the entrances to the base in Jeep Cherokees and pickup trucks. Black Hawk helicopters and F-16s are also used to keep track of unwanted visitors and curiosity seekers. You do not want to challenge the security in Area 51 unless you're prepared for a hefty fine, an interrogation, and knowledge of your whereabouts for the rest of your life. Reports from people that have worked at the base claim there are 22 levels below ground. It has 4 runways, one being 13,000 feet and another a staggering 30,000 feet. 30,000 feet is 6 miles of runway. Papoose Lake, adjacent to Area 51, also known as S4, supposedly has 4 levels below ground with doors camouflaged into the side of a mountain. Unconfirmed reports of aliens and alien craft being housed at S4 have surfaced many times in recent years. According to one former Wackenhut employee, there is a direct underground connection between Area 51 and the underground facility at Lancaster, California. Other suspected underground connections between bases include Dulce, New Mexico, Dugway, Utah, and Page, Arizona. Work on the runways, aprons, water storage tanks, new buildings, etc. continues today. So rumors of the base shutting down or moving are apparently not true. Isn't it ironic that the American taxpayer, you and I, knew nothing about this base, originally opened in 1995 by the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, to test a U-2 aircraft until the 1980s, when a Russian satellite photo was released. Today, the military and government admit the base exists, but nothing else. That's not a guard. Having myself been at the gate entrances to Area 51 a few years ago, and my every move along the boundary watched by the security cameras, listening devices, and the guards, I can assure you that being there gives one a different perspective of the security that's in place compared to watching a documentary on TV or television or reading a book about the base. Another underground, or I should say undermountain base, is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, better known as NORAD, in the Cheyenne Mountain near Colorado Springs, Colorado. This base is definitely vital to our defense, but like Area 51, we're not sure what all transpires beneath the mountain. In January 1956, General Earl Partridge laid the groundwork for a new underground combat operations center to be hollowed out of Cheyenne Mountain. In 1958, the first NORAD agreement was signed by both the United States and Canada, providing the framework for corporate defense planning and operations between both countries. Finally, on April 20th, 1966, full operational capability of the facility was transferred from the previously used above-ground facility at Kemp Air Force Base to Cheyenne Mountain at a cost of $142 million. Today, the annual cost of operating the facility is much more than the original cost was. NORAD operations are conducted by 6 centers manned 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. In 1994, the center monitored 700 unknown radar tracks entering North American airspace. They say many, but they don't say all, were subsequently identified as friendly aircraft that had erred from proper flight plans or used improper procedures. The United States Space Surveillance Network estimates that 12 to 20,000 objects, baseball size and larger, are in orbit. China has recently added 25% of the space junk to the ever-growing debris circling the Earth. The oldest piece in orbit is the Vanguard 1 American satellite launched in 1958. Fears of increased terrorism have all but eliminated tours by the public, and future tours will be confined to a building outside the mountain utilizing video presentations for the facility. NORAD operations are located 1,700 feet inside the mountain in a 4.5-acre granite bunker. There are 2.8 miles of tunnels, 3-foot-thick blast doors, and buildings that set atop metal coils that serve as shock absorbers. Backup power is supplied to the more than 1,000 military and civilian personnel working in the mountain by 6 generators, each as large as a locomotive. The facility is self-sustaining, capable of providing its own power, water, air, and food for up to 800 people for 30 days. Recent reports indicate that most of the operation at NORAD has or is being moved to Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs, while keeping the underground system on standby status. As I move on with this presentation, I ask that you keep 2 things in mind. One is the expenditures required to build and maintain these facilities, which you and I are paying for, with little or no accountability from anyone in our government. And secondly, the labels attached to the request for funding with catchphrases such as special projects, research and development, and national security, of which tens of billions of dollars is consumed. Basically, black projects receive a blank check. As an example, the National Security Act of 1947 made it illegal to ever disclose how much money is spent by the CIA. I wrote an editorial about this a couple years ago, and David Rudiak, another researcher, responded to it with some information. This is back when Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld was still head of the Defense Department, and he said in testimony before Congress on September 10, 2001, money couldn't be accounted for in the defense budget over the last 50 years, estimated at $2.3 trillion, or 25% of the overall budget. How could government accountants and auditors possibly lose track of that much money? Either there is a mass embezzlement going on, or this money is being secretly diverted into the black world. For you that don't know, when your government buys tools, they pay $500 for a hammer, they pay $1,000 for a toilet seat. This goes on and on and on, and there is no accountability for that. Earlier I mentioned that Area 51 was originally opened by the CIA to test a U-2 spy plane, and that's been utilized ever since as a secret location for testing other new aircraft. While doing this research, I came upon some information that really got my attention pertaining to another federal agency heavily involved with underground facilities that I was not aware of. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is not only available to help in times of disaster, but has a much more complex role in protecting our leaders in case of a national emergency and in obtaining personal information on you and I, the citizens of our country. Very few Americans, including very few congressmen, are aware of the existence of Mount Weather, an underground military base carved deep inside a mountain near Bluemont, Virginia, 46 miles from Washington, D.C. Mount Weather is not only buried in the mountain, but it's also buried in secrecy. This facility is part of the continuity of government I mentioned earlier. Mount Weather is a self-sustaining underground command center for FEMA. It's the operational hub of approximately 100 other federal relocation centers, most of which are concentrated in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina. Together, they form the backbone of America's continuity of government program. In the event of a nuclear war, declaration of martial law, or other national emergency, the President, his cabinet, and the rest of the executive branch would be relocated to Mount Weather. Congress has almost no knowledge and no oversight, budgetary or otherwise, about Mount Weather. Officially, Mount Weather and its budget do not exist, and FEMA refuses to answer inquiries about the facility. You can be assured that whatever the cost is, you and I as taxpayers are paying for it. As a Senate subcommittee as far back as 1975 learned that the facility has information on at least 100,000 Americans, and their computers can obtain millions of pieces of additional information on the personal lives of American citizens simply by tapping the data stored in any of the other 96 federal relocation centers. Communication links connect Mount Weather with the White House, almost all military units stationed around the world, and with Raven Rock, the underground Pentagon, 60 miles north of Washington, which I'll explain later. The complex was prepared for use at the time of the 1961 Cuban Missile Crisis, the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963, and was on standby during the 1967 and 68 urban riots. Like Area 51 in Nevada, the federal government wants to keep the Mount Weather facility buried not only below the ground, but in secrecy as well. Public awareness would raise many questions about who's in control in this country. The Constitution says we the people are in control. However, facilities like Mount Weather give a different reality. The Russians have known about Mount Weather for years, and in fact in 1996, the New York Times reported that it appeared as if the Russians were building their own mammoth underground facility similar to Mount Weather as a bunker for Russian leaders in case of a nuclear war. Apparently, the Russian parliament knows as little about their facility as our Congress knows about Mount Just across the Pennsylvania-Maryland border, 50 miles southwest of Harrisburg, is the Raven Rock Underground Command Center, sometimes called Site R. This is another facility in the continuity of government site I mentioned. The site has 700,000 square feet of interior space, underneath 650 acres above ground, and enough room for 3,000 people. For much of the Cold War, Raven Rock had a full-time staff of 350. Underground, the facility contains 6 stories of underground offices, massive steel doors, a subterranean water reservoir, and on the surface, banks of antennas and dishes. It went online in 1954. In the event it is needed, representatives of all the military departments and the Joint Chiefs of Staff will be relocated here. After the Soviet Union detonated its first nuclear weapon in 1949, President Truman approved Raven Rock, and construction began in 1951, becoming operational in 1954. Today it's known as the Alternate Joint Communication Center. As with the other underground facilities I'm discussing, the warning signs are obvious and are intended to keep curiosity seekers out. This may not look like an underground facility for the government, but during the Eisenhower administration in the 1950s, a 112,000 square foot bunker was built several hundred feet beneath the West Virginia wing of the luxurious Greenbrier Resort in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, 250 miles southwest of Washington. Eisenhower suggested the bunker as a way of preserving the balance of power among the 3 branches of government in the event of a nuclear war. Construction began in 1959 and was codenamed the Greek Island. That's an inside entrance look. That's the outside entrance. You'd never know it was there. And it's directly under that resort. People had no idea it was being built, that it was there. In case of a nuclear war, about 1,000 people, including all 535 members of the United States Senate and House of Representatives, along with their top aides, would have been evacuated to this facility. I can't help but think on this picture that I can't see Nancy Pelosi and Dorner sharing a bunk. But that's what it's for. It's for the Congress and the Senate of the United States. 18 dormitories are set up with bunk beds, and they have a 12-bed medical clinic, self-contained power plant, and water purification plant. There was a television studio with a backdrop of the United States Capitol on the wall, where lawmakers would have addressed their constituents had any of them survived above ground to watch television. So we got our congressmen down underground, and they have a picture of the United States Capitol behind them for the TV cameras, and they broadcast out from that point. Well, if they're safe underground and we have a nuclear attack above ground, ain't gonna be anybody watching television. The facility was able to shelter people for 60 days. However, the fresh air supply was only good for 72 hours, after which those inside would have been exposed to airborne radiation, which in the worst cases meant using the crematorium in the facility. In 1992, the Washington Post published an article about the Greenbrier bunker, and soon after, the Pentagon issued a 1-paragraph statement saying the bunker would be deactivated. During the next 2 years, government officials removed sensitive equipment, and the Greenbrier Resort no longer received its $50,000 a year rent. In 1995, the Greenbrier bunker was opened to the public for tours, and a new location for our lawmakers has not yet been discovered, but I'm sure there is one. Underground facilities and tunnels have not been limited to only protecting our government leaders in an emergency, or a secure location for testing aircraft. The pyramids of Giza in Egypt is an area of research I've been pursuing for several years, and information is being obtained that indicates there are many tunnel systems below the sand of the Giza Plateau. The Florida State University team, using ground-penetrating radar and other seismic equipment, is investigating an underground cavity and tunnels of particular interest under the front paws of the Sphinx. Seismic survey indicated several unexplored tunnels and cavities in the bedrock at a depth of some 25 feet beneath the monument's front paws. In Peru, a tunnel measuring 1.25 miles in length has been located on the outskirts of Cusco, Peru. It's believed that the tunnel may form a part of a series of galleries, chambers, fountains, and ancient mausoleums which are probably under the city. Apparently the United States has as many as 10 top secret bases in Australia, with Pine Gap, Australia being the most important. It was commissioned in 1964 and since then has had an average of 1,200 employees over the years. The main reason for Pine Gap being situated where it is its proximity to the Pacific and Indian Oceans and its southern hemispheric window to outer space. American contractors rotating their American workforce from the USA on a shift basis did all the construction. Pine Gap supposedly has 12 levels below ground and long tunnels that extend out from the center like the spokes of a wheel for miles. The public does not know exactly what transpires at Pine Gap, but it appears to be very similar to our own Area 51, in that the buildings above ground are but decoys to what may be taking place deep within the earth below. Our military troops have encountered the enemy hiding in caves and tunnels in practically every conflict we've been involved in over the past 60 years. It's believed that bin Laden and his terrorists lived in caves in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Saddam Hussein was captured and shown on television being escorted out of an underground bunker. On Okinawa in World War II, our troops had to flush the Japanese out of tunnels and underground bunkers at what was called Hacksaw Ridge, a 2,000-foot ridge that included 37 caves and tunnels. 2,500 American troops and 4,500 Japanese died at Hacksaw Ridge. The Japanese Navy Headquarters Command Center was buried 100 feet below the surface in a 1,000-foot long facility, and an underground hospital for wounded Japanese had over 2.5 miles of tunnel. Probably the most abundant use of underground bunkers and tunnels occurred during the Vietnam War. These were not simple underground bunkers, but complex systems able to house and hide the enemy for extended periods. The Cu Chi Trail had over 200 miles of hand-dug tunnels with interconnecting bunkers. One of the interesting aspects of my research on underground bases is the engineering and technology involved, and not only bases underground, but underwater as well. Many underground facilities that were in use during the Cold War have since been deactivated or declassified and are now open to the public, such as the Greenbrier facility I talked about earlier. Another such base was Sweden's Muskö Naval Base. But the Swedish Naval Base is not just a dry dock for ships and submarines that are underground, but the whole naval base is built into the side and underneath a mountain. It contains repair factories, hospitals, dining rooms, and barracks for the thousands of seamen who would serve there in wartime. The hospital alone had over 1,000 beds. Over 1.5 million cubic feet of rock and dirt had to be removed to create that chamber. This looks more like a Hollywood film than it does a wartime underwater facility, but we have learned of these facilities in recent years, and in fact the United States is heavily involved in constructing huge manned offshore bases in mid-ocean deep beneath the sea floor. Through government paper trails and Freedom of Information Act requests, we are hearing about bases large enough to secretly dock submarines. Dr. Richard Sauter's book, Underwater and Underground Bases, is an excellent reference source for more information on that subject. I've given you several examples of known facilities around the world, and in some cases are the size of small cities located several hundred to several thousand feet below the surface. When I first heard about these underground chambers, my engineering background curiosity was piqued. as I've wondered how they were built, who built them, and more importantly, for what purpose. I think for the most part I've answered for the what purpose part of the question. Some were in order to protect our government leaders in the event of a nuclear attack or devastating emergency. Others are for the defense of our country. And still others a secretive location to develop new technology without our adversaries knowing about it. There might be other purposes too, which I'll review later, more difficult to verify than what I already shared with you. Again, the fact there is no accountability for the expenses incurred in building and maintaining these underground facilities is a major concern to me. The workforce to operate the equipment used to tunnel through the earth is readily available through experience over the years in mining for such things as diamonds, coal, salt, and many other common products. Today's tunnel boring is on a much larger scale, and the equipment and technology has advanced tremendously since the 1950s. Some of this equipment can work below the Earth's surface with no knowledge above ground that anything is taking place. Several companies such as Rand Corporation, Bechtel, Dawn Engineering, and others have been heavily involved in tunneling for years. Since we have had the technology to tunnel and bore through mountains and deep within the earth for mining, constructing highways, railroads, drainage structures, and so forth, it is obvious that the government and the military would also be involved. There's no doubt the United States Air Force owns at least one of these tunnel boring machines, also referred to as TBMs, as evidenced by the Air Force insignia on the side of this machine, used at Little Skull Mountain, Nevada in December 1982. Engineers Robert Salter and Frank Davison of MIT have both discussed and given papers on the Plantran concept of moving people rapidly underground by using ultra-speed electromagnetically propelled levitated transportation systems. Passengers would be carried under the United States in less than an hour. That would require a 2,500-mile-long tunnel. Skeptics have scoffed at claims that 100-mile tunnels ran from one military operation to another. Yet engineers have planned tunnels to span the nation. Of course, skeptics are somewhat deficient in imagination when it comes to accomplishments. There are skeptics that never believe we reached the moon, and certainly not by rocket propulsion. In 1960, the Rand Corporation published a study under contract to the Air Force in which 12 specific locations around the country were selected as possible sites for deep underground bases. Some of these locations included Michigan, 2 in Pennsylvania, 2 in Arizona, 2 in Ohio, Colorado, West Virginia, California, and other states. A big player in the underground installation business is the United States Army Corps of Engineers. As early as the 1950s, the Army was training its engineers to design such facilities. In Volume 1 of a 3-volume report, the Corps noted that as surrounding rock is structurally sound, construction of cavities 200 to 600 feet in diameter and located 3,000 to 4,000 feet below the ground represent no unsolvable construction problems. It can be done. Unless an existing abandoned mine shaft exists, a vertical TBM, tunnel boring machine, is used to reach the desired depth for creating a tunnel or underground chamber. Due to the enormous size of some of these machines, 200 to 300 feet in length, many boring machines are assembled underground. Whereas if boring into the side of a mountain, the TBM can be assembled above ground. That's an example of both. The one on the bottom is going to go inside of a mountain, so it's being put together on the outside. And the one on the bottom has already been working, and they're doing some maintenance on it inside the tunnel. As new technology grows, so does the size of these machines. These are 2 examples of the largest diameter machines I've seen to date. Compare the diameter of the cutting head and length of the machine with the men standing by them. Many times when the job is completed underground, a side tunnel is bored and the TBM stays underground, that being more cost effective than getting it back on the surface. After months, sometimes years, breakthrough occurs. That one on the top is a double tunnel. You got two machines working that one. The tunnel boring machines I've shown you are the type that gouge or chew away at the earth and transport the material by conveyor belt to the rear of the machine, where it's hauled out of the tunnel. Crews then shore up the walls and ceiling with steel plates, concrete, and other materials to stabilize the hole they've just made. Another type is the flame jet TBM. High temperature jets of flame are directed against the tunnel face as the head rotates. Flame jet cuts into the rock. Other attachments on the cutting head break off the rock and dump it onto a conveyor belt for removal. Crew rides in a climate-controlled cab due to the high temperature and combustible gas produced by this machine. The last type I want to share with you is the most unique and fascinating to me. It was designed at Los Alamos, New Mexico as a method and apparatus for tunneling by melting. It was given patent number 3693731 on September 26, 1972 by the United States Patent Office, represented by the United States Atomic Energy Commission. This is a nuclear device that burrows through the deep underground rock, designed to convert the rock it excavates into a molten liquid, which fills the cracks in the rock, bonds to the walls of the tunnel, and leaves behind a smooth glass-like lining. Nothing comes out of the ground or has to be taken in, so it can dig away without anyone on the surface having any knowledge it's working deep below within the earth. The patent number is up in the right-hand corner up here with the date. That was done in 1972. I wonder what they have today. Perhaps you now know why, with my engineering background, I've had such an interest in underground bases and tunnels. I've discovered information about some of the equipment being used, and that technology is truly amazing. I've also learned about the secretiveness of our government and military in protecting us from a foreign invasion. Our government and military leaders have secure locations they can go to in a national emergency. However, for you and I, the taxpayers who pay for all that, we're left to care for ourselves. I wonder what good a government-protected underground would be if no one were left on the surface to govern. So what I've shared with you is verifiable, and in most cases does exist. Being able to confirm and verify information is one of the hardest things to accomplish when doing this type of research that I do, particularly as it relates to my other interests in UFOs, Area 51, and the pyramids of Giza. The pyramids are real and still a mystery. Area 51 is real but hidden in secrecy. And underground bases are real, and I've shared some of that with you. That leaves UFOs, and not surprising, they are believed by many to be connected to the other three. Some of the locations in California being linked with UFO reports and underground bases include locations such as Lancaster, Palmdale, and Edwards Air Force Base. Northrop, McDonnell Douglas, and Lockheed operate other facilities. Reports by people who work at or used to work at these facilities describe huge, elaborate underground complexes that are linked together by tunnels. The Northrop facility, which goes by the name the Tejon Ranch, is rumored to have 42 levels below ground. The Lockheed facility is a genuine underground facility and may also function as a continuity of government operation. There's an underground hangar at Edwards Air Force Base that on the surface looks abandoned, but there's a ramp leading down to a modern active hangar below ground. Groom Lake at Area 51 also has a ramp leading underground that on the surface looks like a munitions bunker. Does this mean that all UFOs are really American high-tech aircraft that are being kept secret all these years underground? Are aliens from other planets just a cover story? Unexplained aircraft have been seen for years. Are they made by us, them, or a combination? The F-117 stealth and the B-2 bomber resemble in appearance at certain angles what many times are described as UFOs. These and other new aircraft developed since the 1950s were first test flown at Area 51. One of the rumors about Area 51 that has persisted for years is the possibility that the debris from the Roswell craft, originally taken to Wright Field at Dayton, Ohio, may have been moved to Area 51 for better security. Rumors were also rampant for years that alien craft and beings were being kept at Area 51 in the location I mentioned earlier as S4. This was brought to the forefront when Bob Lazar claimed to have been hired to work there in 1989 to back engineer a recovered spacecraft involved in power and propulsion systems of one of the recovered craft. He claimed as many as 9 different craft were being housed there below ground in hangars. Stanton Friedman and other researchers have done extensive investigation of Lazar's claims, and none of his educational claims of having attended MIT or Caltech have ever been verified, or that he was ever assigned to Area 51. Many strange-looking lights and craft have been seen by credible witnesses in the vicinity of Area 51 over the years, but the mystery and rumors about what transpires at or under the base remain cloaked in secrecy. White Sands Missile Range in southern New Mexico is also alleged to have at least 4 levels below ground, and much of what transpires at that base is held in tight security from the public. The last facility I want to review is a place referred to simply as Dulce. Dulce is a small community northwest of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and east of Farmington on the New Mexico-Colorado border, located on the Hickory Apache Indian Reservation at an elevation of 7,000 feet. Dulce is located right here. Here's Farmington. Down here Santa Fe, Los Alamos, Bloomfield, Aztec. Again, for many years, there have been rumors that the underground complex is believed to be a joint government alien biogenetic lab designed to carry out bizarre experiments on humans and animals. The multi-level facility at Dulce is reported to have a central hub which is controlled by base security. As one descends down into the various levels, security requirements increase. In May 1995, Phil Schneider presented a video lecture in which he described his connection with the underground base at Area 51 and at Dulce as a geological engineer, as well as a structural engineer with both military and aerospace applications. He claimed to be one of 3 people to survive a 1979 firefight between the large gray aliens and U.S. intelligence and military forces at the Dulce Base. According to Schneider, he was involved with building an addition to the deep Dulce Base at a depth of 2 miles when the firefight broke out. 8 months after he did the lecture, he lost his life to what appeared to be a military-style execution in January 1996. He was found dead in his apartment with a piano wire wrapped around his neck, and the media was told he committed suicide. During this lecture, he had talked about the black budget consuming $1.25 trillion per year. And at that time, there were many deep underground military bases in the United States. Rumors about Dulce persist to this day, and others and myself continue to do research about that location and some of the other facilities I've mentioned. To me, Dulce may be a diversionary site. I was up there a couple years ago and did a lecture, and the Hickory Apache Indians are not happy about white people being on their reservation. And I had discovered that any Native American up there that had any type of an experience with something in the sky pretty much kept it to themselves. They felt it was for them personally, and I can respect that. On my website, I have a link to some Native American websites. You can't get many of them. I talked to one Native American one day and I asked him, why don't you people talk about this? His response was, nobody asked. And I thought that was a good response. But Dulce, I've got a lot of questions about. And as I stated in the beginning of this presentation, you'll have to decide if you believe what I have shared with you. I simply gave you information that is available to anyone willing to research it. I think we're now in agreement, based on some of what I've shared with you, that several of these bases and underground facilities do in fact exist. I've shown you photographs and drawings of actual equipment used to bore through the earth to create these gigantic underground systems. We've discussed the cost of national security and black projects that you and I are paying for as taxpayers. I realize that I've given you information that for some of you will be hard to accept. Some of you will totally reject what I've shared with you. and I've seen others who have agreed with what I've been saying, so the decision is yours. Our First Amendment right to freedom of speech and freedom of the press is only as strong as we make it. We have a constitutional right to go into the libraries and databases in order to learn all we can about what the government and major corporations are doing with our tax dollars. I'm trying to exercise that right, and I hope you'll do the same. I do this type of research because I do not believe our government is telling the truth. And I strongly urge young people in particular to start asking questions and demanding answers. I'll conclude with a quote that you've heard before that I always like to use. Always telling the truth means never having to remember anything. Thank you. Now, if I didn't put you all to sleep, we'll do some questions. Yes, ma'am.
On listening to Coast often, you hear people calling in and talking about sounds they cannot explain. And it could easily be that it has something to do with the tunnels.
She's asking about people calling into different shows or talking about sounds they're hearing. Usually it's a hum that they're talking about. The most popular one, I guess, was the Taos hum that people talked about for years. It was some kind of a hum. That's not a good explanation, but I think it's very possible it could be one of two things. It could be equipment, tunnel boring machines actually working, or if it's a completed tunnel, it could be an air shaft where air is flowing through there. It could be either one. I don't think the Taos hum is happening anymore. But the last time I was at Angel Fire, I think they were talking in Angel Fire about a hum that they were hearing close by. So it could be that we think that most of the military bases in the western United States are interconnected through tunnels. And that has to happen because of satellites that can read a newspaper from 200 miles up. We can't do anything above ground anymore. But I think the hum could well come from that. There's one big one going on in Wisconsin right now. I've got a call from a guy up there who's very concerned about it because they're hearing this all night and they don't know what it is. And they're called the military. The military denies anything, but it's interesting. Anybody else? God, I'll put you to sleep. Yes, sir.
Do you think there's any
Can't hear you.
do you think there's any link of like just kind of recent seismic activity in like Missouri with anything going on there?
I'm not hearing you.
Do you think there's any link between like recent seismic activity in Missouri and a lot of the mass migrations of animals?
The aliens in the grays what?
Oh.
Come
Mass
on.
migration of animals. Missouri.
Come up here.
I know there's a fault near Missouri, but is there any link between like underground bases and what's happening like just in the Missouri region?
Can you tell me what's happening in the Missouri region?
Just recent earthquakes.
Okay. There've been a lot of earthquakes and things in Missouri. You want to know if there's any connection with aliens?
Not just like the underground bases, not
Underground bases. I don't know of anything in Missouri. I've not come across anything in Missouri. I wouldn't rule it out because I do think everything west of the Mississippi is interconnected. So that would mean there's tunnel systems going from base to base. I'm sorry, I can't help you because I don't know of anything in Missouri related to the aliens. This thing is all over though. These bases are all over the world, and they have to be now because of satellites.
We have an Air Force base in Missouri, Whiteman Air Force
Yeah.
Base, and that's the home of the B-2 bombers.
Right? And you know who the B-2 bomber is? The same group that dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima
Yes.
and was here in Roswell in 1947.
That's right.
Yeah. The 509th is being well taken care of.
Yes.
They were the ones that dropped the bombs during the Second World War. They were here when the Roswell crash happened, and now they're the B-2 stealth bombers, the biggest thing in the world. So, yeah, they've been taken. That's the military guys were also. Colonel Blanchard was the base commander, head of the 509th. He went on to become a 4-star general and considered for Joint Chief of Staff, the top job. So they got their rewards. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Where in Wisconsin?
I don't remember the town, Molly. The guy called me a couple of weeks ago and just told me Wisconsin. He didn't give me a specific town. If he calls back, I'll find out and let you know.
Okay.
Don, what time do you want to start? We can get you started early if you want.
Anytime.
2:45?
That'd be great.
That work? Okay. Okay, we'll take about a 15-minute break, and Don Burleson will be back, and he's going to talk about Oppenheimer.